going to be a really, maybe even controversial one, because every time I talk about this, I get lots of messages from people saying, you can't say that and everything else. And I think this will be a really, really good opportunity to explain maybe the misinterpretation of what people say, and also what I feel about it as well, because at the end of the day, I respect other people's opinion, and obviously I hope other people can respect my opinion. Doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. And that is, can narcissists be cured? Just let that land with you for a moment. Maybe you've been victimized by a narcissist, and I'm sure, like many of us who've been in that situation, we go through that feeling of, can I do something about that? What can I do? And we often have, I use internal family systems in what I do. We have those people pleasing parts that come up. Maybe if I behave like this, my abuser, so we go into that fawn response, maybe my abuser will behave in a different way and minimize their behavior, and everything will be okay. It must mean I'll be good enough then. So I want to talk to you a little bit about narcissism through a trauma-informed lens of whether we can cure somebody who is a narcissist. And the first thing I want to say is really about what a narcissist is. Now, yes, we have this diagnosis that is in the DSM, the Diagnostical and Statistical Manual, which is the mental disorder book that healthcare professionals will use to diagnose lots and lots of disorders in there as well, including narcissistic personality disorder, where they list 9 traits. And if you have, a certain amount or more, then you are then diagnosed as a narcissist. And the problem with that and medicalizing it is it means someone needs to recognize that their behaviors are abusive or there's something wrong for them to actually go and get a diagnosis. And therein lies one of the first issues. I would love to say, send the narcissist my way and I will work with them and we will heal and cure them. But the problem with that is, for someone to heal, it takes ownership and responsibility of their behavior to even want to heal. So this isn't a case of me saying, do you know what, there's nothing in this world that would ever be able to help a narcissist or what is going on in their brain, their mind, their body. But you can't help somebody who doesn't recognize that there is an issue in the first place. If I said to my ex-husband, hey, come, let me help you. And, I can help sort out your self-worthiness wounds, and then you won't need to have all of those narcissistic traits that show up all of the time. His response would be, well, I'm only behaving like that because of you. If you didn't behave like that, I wouldn't need to be like this. There's no ownership of that subjective distress that his behavior leads to abuse on somebody else. It's ownership of, I'm having to behave like this because of you. And if you weren't like that, I wouldn't need to behave like this. So again, it's really important to recognize these subtle nuances where when someone sees you can't cure a narcissist, well, how can you say that? Or other people will say, well, no, you can't. And you end up almost with 2 camps, those that say you can because they're coming from a place of compassion and think, well, it's demonizing a narcissist then if you say you can't cure or heal them. And that's not very nice for human society, is it, to think that? And yet those who've been victimized by a narcissist, who I know, because I've been there, have tried everything to try and help the situation and nothing ever works. And there is a middle ground to all of this. And I suppose really this is the point of why I'm doing this episode, to talk about all of that too, because there's a lot of hurt and emotion involved in all of this. And, the way I come at all of this is through that trauma-informed lens, and particularly using sort of internal family systems or IFS language around all of this, that when we can always look at situations coming from our true self, so we can look at things with compassion and curiosity, then we can see things very, very differently. But when we're coming from a place of being blended with our own protector parts, the thought of if someone had said to me in the midst of me going through my divorce, let's look at the narcissist with compassion, I'd have probably belted them. I'd have said, what? Compassion? No chance. Look at how they've treated me. So again, it's at different stages that you come through. So my hope is that even with this episode, that those of you who are in the midst of all of this, you can see that what I am saying is there is no excuse for abuse. You know, the narcissist behavior, there is no excuse at all. You know, abuse is abuse is abuse. And I want to make that crystal clear. Okay. When I talk about all of this, this is not excusing the narcissist behavior. In fact, us medicalizing narcissistic personality disorder almost makes it, well, they can't help it. Okay. Now, I also want to talk to you a bit about when we talk about healing or curing a narcissist. You know, narcissists aren't born like that. There isn't a narcissist gene. You know, our behaviors and beliefs about ourselves come from behaviors of those around us when we're growing up, and then our perception and interpretation around all of that. And then if that creates an exile, that we call them in internal family systems, or self-worthiness wounds, as I call them a lot, then everything in our system becomes about protecting us from not feeling the pain of that wound, because it felt really painful as that little kid. And up pop all these protector parts for us. So those in the relationship with a narcissist will often have protector parts like people pleasing. It could be self-harm. It could be eating disorders or addiction. You know, anything that is you not coming from a place of compassion or clarity and confidence and calm and connection, you're blended with a part because there's a wound that is literally bleeding, and your whole system is going to protect you from not feeling that. The same is exactly with a narcissist. Okay, a narcissist isn't born like that. They are interpreting and perceiving behavior from those around them growing up. They get a wound created, and then they get these protector parts coming up. Now, I almost liken it, when I think about sort of IFS language, for instance, that those range of protector parts that come up from a narcissist are narcissistic protector parts, but they are there for a reason, you know, and I've spoken about this before in other episodes. You know, the narcissist primary intention is not to hurt you. The narcissist primary, okay, be clear on this, because they do hurt you, I get that, but the primary intention is for them to not feel activated and triggered from their own core self-worthiness wounds, okay, that worthless wound that they have. So the narcissist system has all of these protector parts coming up, projecting, deflecting, distracting, and soothing away from the narcissist worthless wound. And the impact of their intention of doing that is then you will feel a certain way. So the impact of their intention of not feeling their self-worthiness wound is they might be more manipulative, controlling, angry, malignant, kind of, you know, all of these behaviors that we know a narcissist will do, gaslighting you, that will come up, all with the primary intention of soothing the narcissist wound. Now, the great thing for us who've been in relationships with narcissists, and this is then about empowering those, okay, is the problem with a narcissist is those protector parts of a narcissist that we can almost call collectively a narcissist. So for me, it's like the collection of a narcissist, or the collection of a person's wounds, okay, that then elicit all of these protector parts that come up, become a narcissist. It's like the umbrella term for a collection of protector parts that can be abusive, okay? And we can call that, in collection, narcissist, okay? They weren't born like that, but those protector parts to protect their worthless wound are narcissistic. So that's where we, again, I'm not a huge fan of labels, but I get they will have a certain element of understanding when we do all that. So we're going to call them the narcissist, okay? So that's the protector parts. The issue with a narcissist is we know there's a core wound, right? We know there's something going on where they've interpreted and perceived stuff from childhood. The problem arises to get to that wound to heal. We have to get past those protector parts. So when I work with clients, say, for who have been victimized by a narcissist, and we use IFS and body-based work like brain spotting and EMDR, we have to get to know those protector parts. We have to get to know those protector parts and understand that they're there with the bestest of intentions, but they can be very destructive. And for them to allow us to go deep within to work on that exile, that wounded younger part of yourself, so that then the roles of those protector parts don't need to be there. They can change their roles in the system. The parts aren't going away. We just need to change the roles, okay? But for the parts to change their roles, they need to recognize that there's no wound for them to protect. Now, when we're working with those victimized by a narcissist, They're very aware of all of that. I know I could see that I had beliefs of not feeling good enough. I could take ownership of all of that. And I wanted to work on myself for all of that. The problem with a narcissist is not because we don't want to help. Okay. And I want to be clear on this because many people listening will now, you can't say you can't cure them. Okay. I am saying if I can't help someone, if they don't take ownership and recognize, okay, that there is a problem or an issue, to work on those protector parts, to get to work on that core wound, okay? I can't rock up to a narcissist and go, hey, I know there's worthless wounds there. Let's work on all of this. So I know you've got an addictive part. I know you have an anger part. Let's get to know them and let's work through all of that. Remember, all they will say is, no, I am like this because of them. And if they didn't behave like that, I wouldn't need to be like this. So it's not that nobody would want to help, because I feel immense compassion to a narcissist now. Didn't at the start, like I say, but now I do, because I understand that their behavior is no reflection of me. They're actually a very wounded person from childhood trauma. Again, doesn't excuse the behavior. Have you noticed a lot of the things that I'm saying, I'm having to put other sentences in here because I know there will be people who are victimized by a narcissist going, nope, you can't cure them. You can't heal them. And you're right, in part. And then there's other people who go, yes, you can. You can't demonize people. You can't say that. You can't. But you can't help somebody who doesn't acknowledge that they need to be helped. Now, there are things like medication that are out there as well that potentially can help a narcissist behavior, but there are a number of issues here. One, they need to recognize their issues and want to seek help. Very, very rare. And secondly, even the ones that are on medication doesn't mean they're able to function and have a really healthy relationship. So again, those of you who are thinking, oh, well, maybe mine could go on some medication, the likelihood of them having any form of healthy relationship is highly unlikely. And you'll have seen I've interviewed Professor Sam Vaknin before, who is a narcissist, and he will say that there is no cure, there is no helping, get out, get out, get out. And that is from somebody who is one. But I also know when we look at things through a trauma-informed lens, we always look at the root cause. And I do understand by saying there's no hope, we can't cure them, they're big statements to make. And I do understand all of that. And I'm not saying down the line, maybe we will find something. I don't know. But right now, we know the likelihood is that is not going to happen, because there's no ownership of that subjective distress there. It's just everybody else's fault. Okay, just everybody else's fault. So when we talk about curing or healing a narcissist, I want to really incorporate those who are victimized by a narcissist, and equally coming from that trauma-informed lens of understanding a narcissist's behavior. Remember, their primary intention is not to be abusive. Their primary intention is to not activate and aggravate their own self-worthiness wounds. But by nature of them doing that, their protector parts get projected onto somebody else. And then if you are also then coming from a place of self-worthiness wounds, your protector parts are then going to come up. So when we talk about a narcissist and say codependent relationship, it's just protector parts and protector parts in that relationship. Now, you can't change the narcissist, okay? We can't control or change anybody other than ourselves. But if we can then think, okay, if I'm in that relationship, what can I do? If you can then look and understand and welcome your protector parts and get to know them as to why they are there, we can go back and work on that self-worthiness wound, not just cognitively, but somatically in the body as well, so that the roles then of your protector parts no longer need to be, say, people-pleasing, okay, perfectionism, high achieving, self-harm, eating disorders, okay? They can change the roles in their system. And then what happens when we do that is it will mean then that when the narcissist still behaves in that situation as their protector part, you are then coming from a place of self. Because when you come from a place of self, not blended with a protector part, then what you can is you can see the narcissist with compassion and curiosity. No, that does not excuse their behavior. There's no excuse for abuse, okay? But when you can understand from a place of curiosity and compassion, you really start to understand their behavior is no reflection of you. Their behavior is because their system is so driven not to feel their own self-worthiness wound that they are projecting all of that outwards. But the key here, the power you have is How do you receive all of that? So I hope that really clears up some of this. It's not a case of not curing or healing. You can't do something to someone if they don't recognize they have an issue. You just can't help them. That's not because people wouldn't want to, okay? It's because it takes ownership. And therein lies the problem with a narcissist. There is no ownership or responsibility, which then makes it very difficult. And I want to be really clear here, saying that you can heal and cure them, we need to be very careful with that. Because if you say that to somebody who has tried for years being in a narcissistic relationship to change the narcissist in that relationship and nothing's changed, by then saying you can heal them, they can get better, you are further traumatizing that person by saying, see, you're not even good enough to help and heal a narcissist, the person that you are with. So we have to be really careful with the language that we use around all of this. So we support those victimized by a narcissist, okay? But we give them ownership and empower them to know, can't change the narcissist. What can you do to change how you receive their intention, which is then those protector parts being abusive, because that's where your power comes in. So you don't change their behavior, you change whether you receive the behavior blended with your parts because you have a bleeding self-worthiness wound, or you're coming from a place of true self. That doesn't mean their behavior doesn't stink and isn't nice, isn't abusive, but it means that your system can recognize it's no reflection of you. So I hope that really helps you start to see those nuances. It's not a kind of just yes, no, da, 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 and everything else, okay? Yes, there's a lot of research going on, but as yet, there is no research to say we can cure a narcissist. And it takes time for people to recognize, and to go and acknowledge that their behaviors are narcissistic in nature. And if you hear from people who say, yes, you can, ask for the evidence of all of that, okay? And also, yes, they may be on medication, okay? Because some do get diagnosed, but how are their relationships with other people? How is their connection with others? I don't want to castigate necessarily narcissists and kind of like demonize them insofar as because they are wounded. And I totally understand that. But we can't help somebody who doesn't acknowledge and then doesn't get the help that they really, really need. So we have to empower those that can recognize that and work on their self-worthiness wounds so they then receive the narcissist behavior in a completely different way, coming from a place of self. So I'd love to know your thoughts on all of that. I'm sure many of you listening to this may have been triggered, may have been like, oh, I don't know about that, or this or that. I want you to know, whatever relationship you have with a narcissist right now, it is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to really get curious about why you feel and why you react or why you're in those relationships. And you can be empowered in yourself then to shift all of that and to change all of that, because we can't change the narcissist. In fact, we can't change anybody. It's not our decision to make about changing anybody else. The only thing you can do is empower yourself to think, okay, I'm getting curious. This is how I'm reacting to all of this, or I keep being in narcissistic relationships. Why? Let's look at that trauma-informed lens, the root cause, not just symptom management. Let's not just get PhDs in the narcissist or anything. Let's look at root cause in all of that. And this is all the stuff that I cover in my narcissistic trauma recovery program as well. We go through a whole host of this to empower you to recognize where's that wound come from. We can process that through the brain, the mind, and the body using things like brain spotting and EMDR and a lot of parts mapping and all of that as well. So I hope that helps. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.